Some people tear up faster than others. A conversation shifts slightly. A memory surfaces. A piece of music hits a nerve. And suddenly, emotion spills over. In many cultures, especially for adults, this reaction is quickly labeled as fragility or lack of control. But psychology tells a very different story. Crying easily is rarely a sign of weakness. In fact, it often reflects a nervous system that is deeply attuned, emotionally efficient, and highly responsive to meaning. Crying is not simply an emotional leak. It is a regulated biological response. When someone cries, the brain activates systems involved in emotional processing, stress regulation, and social signaling. For people who cry easily, these systems are more accessible. Their emotional thresholds are not lower because they are unstable, but because their brains allow faster release instead of prolonged suppression. Psychologically, people who cry easily tend to process emotion externally rather than storing it internally. This is important. Many adults learn early to contain feelings until they harden into tension, irritability, or emotional numbness. Those who cry more readily often bypass that buildup. Their nervous systems move emotion through instead of locking it in. What looks like vulnerability is often emotional efficiency. There is also a strong link between crying and empathy. People who are highly empathetic tend to mirror emotional states more intensely. Their brains respond not only to their own feelings, but to emotional cues in others. Facial expressions, tone changes, or emotional subtext activate similar neural pathways as if the experience were personal. Tears, in this case, are not self-centered reactions. They are signs of emotional resonance. Neuroscience supports this. Individuals who cry easily often show higher activity in brain regions involved in emotional awareness and interoception, the ability to sense internal states. This means they feel emotions sooner and more clearly. While some people require intense stimuli to trigger an emotional response, others detect subtle shifts and respond immediately. Neither is superior. They are simply different emotional processing styles. Another factor is emotional honesty. People who cry easily are often less invested in emotional performance. They are less concerned with appearing composed and more focused on being accurate to what they feel. This does not mean they lack self-control. It means they prioritize emotional truth over social masking. For many adults, especially those who have spent years suppressing emotion, this level of openness can feel unfamiliar or even threatening to witness. It's also important to distinguish crying from emotional instability. Crying easily does not mean emotions are overwhelming or unmanageable. In fact, many people who cry easily recover faster emotionally. Tears activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps the body return to baseline after stress. In this sense, crying can shorten emotional episodes rather than prolong them. Life experience plays a role as well. People who have lived through loss, responsibility, or emotional complexity often become more emotionally permeable over time, not less. Experience sharpens sensitivity. Crying becomes less about shock and more about recognition. The emotion isn't new, it's familiar, and the body knows how to respond. Social judgment around crying tends to be harsh, particularly for adults. But psychology increasingly recognizes that emotional suppression carries long-term costs: chronic stress, emotional detachment, and difficulty connecting. Crying, when it occurs naturally and proportionally, is not regression. It's regulation. Understanding the psychology of people who cry easily requires shifting perspective. These individuals are not weak, immature, or out of control. They are emotionally responsive, neurologically open, and often deeply self-aware. Their tears are not signs of collapse, but signals of processing. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, the question isn't, "Why am I so sensitive?" It's, "Why does my system allow emotion to move instead of hiding it?" And in a world that often rewards emotional silence, that may be a quiet form of strength many misunderstand.